Welcome to Talkin Business. I'm Joe Catrambone. I'm CEO of the Stuart Martin County Chamber of Commerce, and it is my distinct pleasure and honor to have our new county administrator. Congratulations, by the way, on that thing.
Thank you, Joe.
On Martin County Administrator. One of the things I like to do, Don, is always start off because we all know each other's history, but a lot of people won't. So I like to ask people, especially, what brought you to Martin County, and how long have you been here?
So I guess there's two parts to that question. One, I grew up in the Treasure Coast, so in some ways I've been around. But what brought me to Martin County was I was the county's first coastal engineer, and at the time when St. Lucie Inlet was having a lot of troubles, and it was filled in, and and I had been a coastal engineer in Indian River County, and so I was actually recruited by to come, and I interviewed and thought that it had a lot of great opportunities for me in my quest to work on larger capital projects related to coastal work, and so that's initially what brought me here.
Good foresight.
It was.
So was that during when God, I remember when the inlet was shoaled in, and
that's correct. So Peter Cheney was the county administrator at the time, and that's right, and it had been.
That was a nightmare.
So I came in right at there was the kerfuffle of there was an inlet committee, and there was lots of different groups, and everybody was marching in on the commission saying you need to do something, and of course the board's action was this is the Corps of Engineers, they should be doing their part, and of course the federal government is these little shallow draft inlets we don't care about anymore, you figure it out on your own. So that was the backdrop of how to. And of course, the maintenance of the inlet was, crucial for our marine industries and the flushing of the estuary. And so, throughout that time, I think we put together a good program and a good partnership with the Corps.
It's amazing because it was always an issue. Every year was an issue about and the other thing was beach erosion.
That's right.
Remember, so it was always a to-do. We had to beg for money to replenish the beaches. What happened? Why is that? How has that all been taken care of?
So, of course, the erosion's still happening.
Yeah, but we're replacing the sand, right?
What's happened is, in fact, I came in during the construction of the first beach project there in 1996, 95, 96. And I was, since that time, the county put together a program for our share. And the state has developed a much more robust program matching. And then the federal government has actually funded about 48% of the project. And so throughout that time, we've been able to re-nourish the project in a way that each time we do it, it's lasting longer. We thought it would last about 9 years, and of course, when you first do a project, and we get hit by some hurricanes, it lasted about 4, and 2005, of course, we got hit, and we got a project partially complete, and the contractor ran away and didn't finish it. So there's always horror stories amongst these things, but from the public's perspective, I think what you see today is that the beach has been renourished on the last 2 cycles. Before it was, swimming pools weren't exposed and condo foundations, those types of things.
Big issue.
Any event, so it really has the 2 things that happened is the county has in our capital improvement program has both for the inlet and the beach provided our fair share. The state and our local delegation has throughout the years supported that funding. It's about $50 million a year into the state that they put towards the beach program. Sometimes it's higher, when we have storms and such. But nonetheless, that program, it's been a great program in that all of the counties from Dade County and Pinellas and all the players in the state that have to do beach erosion projects have pretty much lined up where we're not competing against each other, but ensuring that the funds are there, and then the DEP ranks the projects, and we've all been able to get the funds when we need them around the state. And so that's really, I guess, in the end,
they're recurring funds.
They're recurring funds.
That's amazing, because I remember we used to beg I
Yes.
remember we used to go to Washington, beg, please help us.
Yeah, it used to be always a line item appropriation. It was, in the old days it was called earmarks, and some people called them, other project names. But nonetheless, for us, it was an important project. And
Nobody ever called them turkeys, did they?
occasionally there would be groups that, of course, beach nourishment has its fans and its detractors. So I won't go into the negative side of the comments. But
There's always negative.
There's always, but I want to keep our show positive here, Joe. But I think it bears success. And in fact, we're probably getting off some of the topics here. But after the 2004-05 season, Congress funded a study to look at the effectiveness of beach nourishment, and one of the projects they chose was Martin County, and the results showed far and above that it was for the national benefits and clearly for our local benefits, that it more than paid for itself.
And it does.
Yeah.
I'm glad they did a study, but we already knew that.
Right. Yes.
So listen, yesterday was your first meeting that you presided over. So anything you want to talk about or anything of interest that?
Well, I think a couple of things that came up, and one, there's been some discussion on housing, and there in the affordable workforce housing, that type of thing. And so there was a lot of speakers that came in to ask the commission to look into that. It was not a specific item on the agenda, but it did generate quite a bit of conversation. So we'll be bringing back an agenda probably in September to talk about how we might work on this solution, and of course it involves for the government, and we're fairly conservative. How does we help this private sector, work in this arena? And then so it's everything from working with nonprofits, some maybe looking at some of our codes within reason, and so we'll be bringing back at least a conversation. I think they were interested in forming a committee. We have an affordable housing committee already, but I think they were trying to expand it a little bit with, maybe talking to the school and how they're dealing with teachers and kind of targeting some of that employment, how we might, find ways to have more, housing that's affordable. So that's the challenge. It's obviously a topic of the day. So that came up. But I think the other one, which actually we touched on and a little bit here at the beginning, was we had an update on our Inlet program, and which is going well. And Brian Mast has requested some money, and actually it's in the president's budget also for rehabbing the South Jetty on the state park there. The last project we did, move sand from the inlet, put it in front of the state park, which had been eroding. And again, the inlet staying open, nobody's running the ground, and nobody, and so that was just sort of an update to the board. It was a positive, and the positive also was that the Army Corps of Engineers actually is helping fund this project right now. They have got back to the funding. It is a federal inlet, and that the county is the local sponsor. Congressionally authorized, and they're looking to rehab the jetty and do the next dredging of the inlet at potentially no cost to Martin County at all. So that's
great. I just want to touch on Brian Mast a second. In my 30-some years here, and we've had great congressmen, but he is really the first one since I've been here that is so concerned about our natural resources and the river and the jetties and the inlet and the things of that nature, and he is. We got some lip service from a couple of them, but his heart and soul is, I think, from what I see in the natural resources and taking care of what we have here and preserving our natural resources.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, you had that bill that was passed and recently signed about the hazardous algae and directing the Corps to come up with solutions. So, no, Brian has very much been an advocate for that.
For sure. He's a great representative for us. So I know we are, and so certainly you are. We're in the beginning the budgetary process, and I know that's something on your agenda to come to come around soon. You're working on it
Yeah,
already?
so Monday we have our budget hearing, and we'll be reviewing the constitutional officers' budgets along with the county's proposed budget, and we're proposing a 2.9, almost 3% reduction in our millage rate.
Oh, really?
And that's in large part due to the fact that we have had a healthy growth in the county in terms of our tax base, and so it certainly warrants we're able to fund all of our government and include a reduction, which I think is the 3%, maybe the largest in the Treasure Coast, as I understand it right now. But and so some of the highlights on that is, our sheriff's got a large, putting on body cams. So there is some significant investment in public safety there.
That's always a huge part of the budget, is the sheriff's budget.
It is.
That takes place, and it appears under the county budget.
It does.
Which, in my opinion, has always skewed the numbers, because people say, what that, because that's a huge number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and but the sheriff does a great job.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing at all.
And
I'm
what
just
he
saying
came
that
forward with was, but it's nice to be able to accommodate some needs that he has and still provide a reduction in our millage. So we're we had some few capital project increases that had been removed out of the budget last year to try to be conservative. And then largely, a lot of our increases are due, like to everybody else, increased fuel, electricity, labor costs, all those types of things, contractual obligations really makes up the bulk of really what we're asking for. So, but yes, we'll be talking about that on Monday, and hopefully that will go smoothly.
So I've written something down here, but are you seeing any impacts for price increases and supply chain issues with all the stuff that's going on?
Oh, absolutely. So we've had Martin County's had a rather robust capital improvements program with our septic to sewer, rehabbing roads, and other backlog things that we had not done during the Great Recession, and still catching up. But the challenge has been that with the price increases that really started in 2021, I think is about where you started seeing the spike in the supply chain problems. So our challenge is with contracts that might take a year or two to complete, and of course there's obligations for the contractor to fulfill, and if they didn't order their materials in year one and in year two, they're
behind the eight ball.
They're behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge. The other issue is, like, for instance, concrete. Sometimes you're only limited to a 20-yard pour, and if your contractor misses, for instance, they scheduled it for let's say the first week of June, and for some reason they weren't ready. The cement contractors are like, we'll see you in another 2 months, because it's
Wow.
just been really a challenge to deliver your projects on time.
It's a balancing act.
It is a balancing act, and of course, some of our contracts allow us to look at escalation prices, that are multi-year. Some of them do not. So that's been a challenge for a lot of our local contractors. And so going forward, we're looking at how we, that challenge of being fair, but not, also being fiscally, responsible with the public's dollar on how you issue a contract that gets you the best price. But you also don't want to see your contractors go out of business during your job too. So we've had that. Fortunately, we haven't had that degree of difficulty at this point, but it certainly has been reflected in some of our bids, where you either get very few bids because the contractors, and you talk to them, and if you have a contract that's more than a year long, they're concerned that they can't honor the price that they give it, or they give a grossly inflated price. So those are some of the challenges that we're working on with our legal and other construction experts on how we balance that risk, and without creating a market that creates unbalanced bids.
I am involved in years and years and years, but I remember, especially in Brevard County, we used to get involved in with some of the contracts. And at that time, there were penalty clauses and clauses. If you got done early, there was a bonus. I forget what they call it, but there were penalty
Right.
clauses if you were late. Do you still build that into a contract when you deal with contractors today?
Yes,
on projects?
we do have a number of contracts will have penalties for they call liquidated damages if they don't complete it within a certain time. And we have not used the bonus for a while. Incentive for working early, because it's a challenge sometimes to measure the time of performance, because there's always things within a contract that legally you're obligated to allow for, natural weather or things like that.
Yeah, well, there's acts of God.
And right. And so anyway, sometimes you get in debates at the end that, hey, I was late, but I still need a bonus because I was early because I had these natural delays. And so that's not an easy thing to explain to the public. So we've kind of gotten away from the early bonuses just simply because of the measuring it fairly and accurately it's sometimes simpler just to, here's the price, here's the time, get it done.
Okay. So some years ago, the county took out a loan to complete some high priority projects. Some of those were fire stations. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we borrowed $18 million we had a number of fire stations that were, a couple needed rehab and several needed to be completely rebuilt. And our challenge is that these are 24-hour operations, and the health and safety of how you build a proper fire station, having diesel trucks idling in the bay and the fumes getting into the sleeping quarters and things.
Yeah, because they're actually homes.
Right, exactly. So how, what used to be done is just not acceptable anymore. So we've just opened Fire Station 33 in the Hope Sound area, and that was that's a great project. It was about $5.6 million. In South County, we completed that project as again about 5.2, and Fire Station 14 in Hudson Island is under construction right now. Again, we moved it a little bit further away from the beach, so salt corrosion was a problem there, and so for resiliency and other reasons, it's a much better location. So these have been really well-needed projects. It certainly helped the morale of those men and women that are stationed there.
They're living there. What is it, like they work 3 days on and 3 days off?
That's
or something
right.
like that?
Yes.
So they're living there.
They're living there 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so this has been a great improvement, much more energy efficient too, and much healthier environment for them to live in.
Is that the biggest change you've seen? Let's say from the first fire station you were involved in or saw it built. Is that the biggest change in the latest construction for fire?
I think that there's a significant change again in how you deal with the environmental, how you deal with the gear that they use when they fight a fire, that it's coated with gases and other things. Again, you don't want it off-gassing and going into your living space. So there's a lot more thought that's gone into where some of these, where the equipment is stored, how the how to get in and out of the buildings. There's much better doors that open faster. All these little things that are geared towards getting the firemen and paramedics to the scene in as short a time as possible.
So when a firefighter comes back from fighting whether it be a forest fire, whatever it may be, they don't just pull back into the station. They've got to clean their equipment before it goes back into the station. Do they have to? Is there a procedure they go through? Or
then I couldn't enumerate all the procedures they go through.
So it's not. They just don't back their truck
But they
up.
still have lockers and things to put them into,
So that would isolate.
And those used to be really adjoining their living spaces, and now they still are, but they're walled off, and the ventilation systems are all done in a way that keeps whatever happened to be coating their gear from off-gassing into their living environment.
So I noticed you got some notes with you. Is there some stuff you want to share with us that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I was just, I know you was going to get me with some hard facts here, and I didn't want to.
I don't like facts.
No, but really, I think we've touched on quite a bit of it. Our budget that we'll be talking about on Monday, it's $558 million, of which 244 of that comes from property taxes. And it was interesting for me looking a little bit in terms of, when you think of Martin County and you think of its growth, and a lot of people look at it as a lot of growth. But when you measure it compared to our neighbors, I was looking back 10 years ago, and, St. Lucie County, we were all still coming out of the recession, and their property values still had a slight decrease. And ours were increasing at 1% or so. But when you look at that 10-year average, I didn't include this year. Martin County added about $900 million in property values a year, and St. Lucie, which had gone negative, but on average added about $1.2 billion in property values a year, and I'm sure they probably are over $2 billion this year. But then our neighbor to the south, Palm Beach County, on average was adding $10 billion a year in property values. So I was just thinking of it just in terms of scale. So their new construction and value, every 2 years they added a Martin County's worth of taxable value. And so when you think about, supply chains and construction and what we're dealing with, and of course, our little Treasure Coast region, or the, Florida here, is consuming a lot of materials because there is a lot of growth surrounding us. So, in comparison, Martin County is still a slow growth. And
will always be.
And always be, exactly. And I just wanted to, and certainly, but we pride ourselves on high quality growth when we do have it. Is that we want smart and high quality.
And quality,
growth.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. That's why we are what we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you worked with Tarrant for a long time. I think one of the Tarrant's, I know Tarrant Strait was budgetary and financial.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got certainly the longest tenure of any county administrator since I've been here, probably in history.
I don't think that will be broken for some time.
Yeah. No, well, so one of her strengths that I saw was her ability to groom her staff. People don't realize, I can remember when the county went out on searches to get a county administrator. This was an automatic, smooth transition. Tarrant had you in place. He had George in place. People don't understand how much money that has saved the county just from doing a nationwide search, is what we used to do for a county administrator. Mm-hmm. And so, do you see any changes that would help the county operation that you might want to change or add to a little something that Tarrant was doing, or something that you see that you would, an area you might want to address?
No, it's a good question, and I think some folks asked, me about, my management philosophy, and it's certainly when I talked to the board about when they were considering replacing Tarrant, and was that if they were looking for somebody to do lots of change, clean house, so to speak, then I was not their person. They should go somewhere else. And so I think, my selection certainly is, it's an honor to be considered and selected, but I also think it represents a certain stability, and the fact that I think there is a trust that the Martin County staff and organization is doing well. and certainly there are some things that will have my fingerprints on, but there is not any sort of wholesale changes that I'm looking to do. I'm really more interested in facilitating our departments to, again, help, like you said, with advancing staff within, firing new talent where we need it to come into the county, and really accomplish the goals of the board to meet our strategic objectives. Really, that's about as simply as I can put it. There's some minor things, but nothing I would say that is like rearranging departments or aggregating
broke,
things.
Don't fix it. Yeah.
So we have like all of us, we have the challenges of baby boomers that are in leadership positions that are retiring. We certainly experience a little bit of the great resignation that people are feeling, and so staffing is a considerable issue for all of us. And will continue to be so.
I think one of the, and I don't know how it came about or what brought it about, but I think one of the best things I saw happen was, and it was the board, it was Taryn, that brought you and George as assistants to Taryn, whatever I think that took a load off of Taryn for sure, and it made things, I think, move, from my perspective, move more smoothly, because you had your area, George had his area, Taryn had his area. So where I'm going is, is there going to be another? Is it going to be just you and George? Are you bringing somebody else? Can you share that with me?
Oh, absolutely. So I've said the same, and talked openly about this as well. So the position I left, the deputy position, I'm leaving vacant for the time being, and would look to fill it in the future as an assistant administrator. But normally when you hire a new administrator, and most often they're coming from somewhere else, and they would bring in their team. Well, my team is the team I've been working with for the last 20 years, and so and certainly there are candidates within the organization that would be good in the assistant administrator. But I'm really more focused right now on settling in with the board, getting some of our priorities, looking strategically at what we need to do. Because when I do bring somebody in, they need to fit the organization is important. So I don't have an individual in mind at this time, and would likely, advertise and look for somebody in the future. I do think that it would be helpful, but then I do have a lot of knowledge of some of the departments that have been reporting to me, and I do see that my role could be enhanced by having a person there. But for the time being, I guess I'm just looking to settle in.
Well, that's
with
smart.
the board.
You let the dust settle. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else we missed you want to talk about?
No, I think there's always lots of things to
I
talk
know,
about, Joe. And
yeah,
I want to stop while I'm ahead before I take my shoe and put it in my mouth.
Well, I have a habit of doing that.
Yeah, well.
Well, Don, thank you so much. I know you're busy. I really appreciate your coming up here and taking time out of your busy day. But thank you so much. And congratulations again, and best of luck. I know you're going to do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.